Cool. So before I get started, I guess not a lot of us have open laptops, which is great. I don't want everybody to be on their laptops, but for those of you who are, I will have some code that I'm gonna like not type. I'm gonna like copy and paste, so you don't have to watch me type all night. And if you want to follow along, I do have all of my notes and my slides already out there on my GitHub, github.com/GavinR/presentations. Just hit this bots in JS, and the code's out there as well as the slides. So if you want to try and follow along, that's where that is. But yeah, like you guys said, I'm Gavin Rehkemper. It's a tough last name. I come to these meetups every once in a while. Not all the time. I'm usually quiet in the corner, but this time I'm presenting, so hopefully this will go well. I'm going to talk about bots and JavaScript. My background is I do a lot of JavaScript. I work in the mapping technology area. I work for a company called Esri, and so we work for customers who are using our technology, so I get to build JavaScript apps mostly, but I do Python stuff as well and work with our open source technologies, helping people implement Geo. And that's actually where this talk came from. One of our customers wanted to take their Esri cloud platform, their data out on the cloud, and expose it to their customer, to the city. This was a city down in Georgia. Not only expose the data through maps and through the internet, but also through a bot, through Alexa specifically. And so we did that project for them, and that's where a lot of this, the background for this talk comes from. So you may be saying, bots, that's so 2016. And I'll admit, bots were the super huge buzzword a couple of years ago, right? Nowadays, buzzwords are machine learning and AI and all that stuff. But I would assert that perhaps bots are coming back a little bit. There's this thing called the hype cycle, and it kind of has this idea that I have on the screen here. We tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. And I would posit that perhaps bots and AI within bots might be one of those things that it was really hyped back in 2016, and it's not as popular right now, but it might be a big technology in the long run, so something to get excited about. Here is the graph that's often cited for the hype cycle. I think we've probably all seen this, that back in 2016 we probably hit the peak of inflated expectations, and right now bots aren't super popular, but I think with the advent of home devices like Amazon Alexa or the Google Home, these things are becoming a little bit more popular for developers like us to put out bots especially for the home devices. So I think that's where there's a little bit more popularity here. And in fact, the bot that we built for the city of Johns Creek down in Georgia, it was featured last week on one of their local television news sites. It's a horrible video. It doesn't say anything accurate about the actual thing we built, but it shows that the public has interest in these, and so hopefully there's a lot of ideas as well out there for bots. A lot of these have been created, but I found that when I was doing research, I found this article out there that has like 80 ideas, from a kudos bot to a meeting avoidance bot. That I would love to build that one for my company. SEO monitoring bot. There are tons of ideas that are small enough to kind of build in a weekend. You might even make some money off of it, or you might, improve the life of somebody out there just with a small little project. So it's I think it's a really kind of exciting and cool technology to learn. I hope I've excited you guys a little bit about the topic, and so now we'll get into it. So just a quick agenda here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the technology stack that I'm using, that we're going to talk about, and then we'll get into some live coding. Of course, I'll do the hello world and get something going. Then we'll deploy that hello world to a Slack instance. Then we'll add a little bit more functionality to make it into the jSTL bot that we all know and love and we want. And then we'll deploy that to yet another platform, Twilio, so that we have an SMS interface where we can text our bot and get a response back. Then I'll talk about a few more advanced things like how to debug and some advanced coding, and hopefully by the end of the night you'll know how to create a bot, and we'll also have a bot that we might even deploy that gives information about the jSTL meetup. So, like Chris said, we're using Claudia.js for these bots. This is a package that's been out since the hype of 2015, 2016. It's something that it's kind of a little like Gulp or Grunt, where it's got kind of two levels. You install it globally, and that gives you almost like a CLI where you can install, where you can set up your projects with a create command as well as update your projects. And that CLI kind of is in charge of packaging up your code and sending it out to AWS. And then there's also a local package that you actually utilize in your code. We're going to be building a Node.js program, and so that's the package that you actually require and you use. And that's the package that really is the core of Claudia.js. So if you think about it, the idea here, and I don't know if I've actually explained this, but we want to build one program, one set of code, and we want to deploy it to multiple different platforms, right? Because if we just build a bot specifically for Slack, that's kind of lame, right? So Claudia.js is kind of that translation level for you, so that you can deploy it to both Slack, Facebook, Twilio, Amazon Alexa. I think there's like 10 platforms that they support, and I think there's always more coming. And so all these API endpoints are a little bit different, right? Some of them are JSON based, some of them are XML based, blah, blah, blah. Claudia handles translating that, so we've got a standard interface where we're just taking in a message and responding with a message, and then everything else is taken care of for us. So we're at a really high level of JavaScript abstraction here, which is a great place to be because you can build cool stuff really quickly. Like I said, this Claudia by default deploys to AWS. Specifically, it creates Lambda functions for you, so that's what's actually running out there. Your node code gets packaged up, and it gets run out on AWS Lambda. It also creates the HTTP endpoints for you using the API gateway of AWS, as well as it automatically creates all like the roles and groups and users that you all need to do. So it saves you a lot of time in configuring AWS, because I don't know about you guys, but I like AWS, but I don't like configuring it. Sometimes it can be a little confusing, so it's nice that kind of Claudia takes care of that for us. So now I'm going to jump into some coding stuff. Any questions on any of that so far? Cool. And like I said, I've got some notes here, so I'll be copying and pasting code so you guys don't have to watch me type all night. So hopefully that'll be good. Can you all see, is this big enough? Good? Okay. So I'm in VS Code here. I've got my terminal on the bottom, and I've got my code at the top. Let's get started. Like I said, I'm going to get started by just running npm install-g Claudia to install this package globally, and this will, like I said, is kind of like our CLI, and it's going to enable me to use the keyword Claudia to create a project later.
Do you need to install that globally?
Yes, this one you do. Yeah, and then we'll install a local one later.
It's like Angular's command line ng. You install it globally, and then
Yep. So now I'm literally gonna start from scratch here, so you guys will be able to see this from the very beginning. I'm gonna create a new folder, test. Let's cd into test. Oh, got a cd into source spots. And we'll just do an npm init and just blow through that just to get our package.json going. I think are we all familiar with package.json npm? Okay, cool. So we'll just start with that. So now we've just got our package.json. And I'm going to now install the local package that we install to our actual project. So that's this Claudia bot builder. And so that's here, npm install, tac save, Claudia bot builder. That's, like I said, is going to install the package that we're actually going to utilize in our Node.js code we're going to require in. So now I'll create our first entry file. I'm just going to call that bot.js. You can really call it anything. I'll show you how we refer to that later. But I'm going to copy in some code here. And this is going to be our kind of hello world. We're just doing a standard npm or node require in with that Claudia bot builder that I just installed. We're going to utilize that function and pass it a anonymous function, and it's super simple. All it does is pass in a message object, and then you can do it with that whatever you want, right? So we're just going to tack on the word hello to that and then pass the text back, and whatever we return is what will get returned back to the user when they interact with the bot. So now we're going to utilize that global CLI kind of that I was talking about earlier. The first time you ever do this is you just do Claudia create. So I'll run that. You can see that I've got a few switches on there. The first one is the regions, right? So if you're familiar with AWS, you know there's different regions. You can deploy your code to different regions, and so that's how you set that. And then the --API module, that's how you say which JavaScript file is going to be your root of your project. So I passed just the word bot because I created bot.js here. And what this is doing in the background is it's packaging it up. You can see actually here it's creating the Lambda function, it's creating the roles, and it's creating the API gateway endpoint. So it's doing all this stuff for us that we don't really have to do that ourselves, which is super nice.
Is there other deployment options?
Other than AWS? I think you can do it to Azure, but I'm not totally sure.
But it's going to push it to the cloud either way, right?
Yeah, that's kind of their thing, focusing on pushing to the cloud. Yeah.
Okay.
What's Claudia built in?
JavaScript.
I think JavaScript.
I pulled up the GitHub, and it's like 99 point something% JavaScript and a little bit of shell.
Oh.
Yeah. So now that's done, and so we've got, it actually immediately gives us back a JSON object here that we can see all of the endpoints for the stuff that we just published out. Now for each one of these, it's a little confusing, or I was a little confused by this because these aren't immediately usable. Actually, you have to run this. You have to run a configure script, a one-time configure script for every platform that you want to enable. So I'm going to do that right now. And this is basically going to do a similar. It's going to do a Claudia update, right? So Claudia update is just whenever you change your code and you want to repackage it up and resend it out to AWS. That's what you'll run. But this time we're doing configure / command. And so that's saying, hey, while you're updating, I also want to enable the / command. Because a lot of these platforms, there's platform-specific things like API keys or endpoints or different things. That's a platform-specific thing that you need to configure. So that's kind of how you do that.
Is there a global config for Claudia? Where you actually added your API keys?
Yeah. In this Claudia.json is actually where all that stuff is stored.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't actually point that out. But yeah, so this is where it drops this .json file on your machine to kind of save a lot of the settings that you're kind of configuring there. So now you can see in my terminal, it's asking for my Slack token. So let's pop over to Slack. I haven't actually set this up in the STL Tech Slack. This is only my test one, but I need to do that. So all I need to do in Slack is go to the apps. I already installed the /commands app in my organization, and I can add a configuration. And we can name our command jSTL. And we need to grab the token here. So I'll just paste that in here. Use the same token there. And so now that's kind of configured for Slack to work. So now I'm just going to grab the API endpoint from here and paste that into the URL. So this is the URL that Slack's going to hit whenever I call this / command. It's going to take my text and pass it to this URL.
Is there a way to be able to tell which services are enabled and disabled from that, like from the terminal?
Like which ones? Yeah, which ones it exposes.
Yeah, like from this one, we know that all these are set up, but only Slack is enabled. Is there a way of being able to tell that as like a separate list? Or?
I don't know. I think there is a command line option to say only expose a single one. So when you do Claudia create, you can say only expose Slack or whatever.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a way you can do that. Cool. So let me put in what else? Description. Ask a question. And I'll just save that. And this should be immediately available, so I'm going to do /jSTL and Gavin.
Nice.
And with any luck, there's our hello world, right? So we can do anything. And so that was really fast, right? We've already got a hello world, super fast. Like I said, we're like at the very top of the JavaScript stack from a sense, right? We're not using any low-level stuff at all. We were built on all this huge tower of dependencies and stuff, but that's okay because it gets us going really fast. So that's our hello world. What's next? Well, we want to add some more functionality, right? We don't just want hello world. We want a jSTL bot. So to do that, let's grab some code. The first thing I'm going to do is kind of modularize my code a little bit. So instead of sending in an anonymous function here, I'm going to include a separate JavaScript file and I'm going to call it jSTL bot. I'm still including bot builder like I did before, and I'm still calling bot builder like I did before, but we're just going to call the get response function in our jSTL bot module, so that it's both modular, but it's also going to allow us to do some unit testing and like code separation later on. So I'll save that, and I will create our jSTL bot file, and I'll copy in some code. So this code, let's see what. Okay, so I'll explain this code a little bit. It's not super complicated at all. It's really simple actually. It's a single function. We're exporting that function using the Node.js export style coding. I'm just taking our input text, right? This is what's going to come from whatever the person typed in when they're engaging our bot. I'm going to make it all lowercase. And then just for the purposes of this demo, keeping it simple, I'm just doing a basic checking if words exist in the string that's coming in. And based on that, I'm going to respond with a different string. You obviously could do something much more complex, even do maybe some AI libraries or something like that. I think people have done some stuff super complex, but this is just kind of keeping it simple, right? So I'm just saying, hey, if the text includes next meeting, let's build something out. If the text includes organizer, well, I have Chris because that's who I was working with, but I know we have 4 different organizers, so I guess we need to fix that. If it asks about Trello, speaking of the Trello board, it's going to respond with our Trello URL, and if we're asking about a homepage, it's going to give back our meetup.com URL. So super simple. Save that out. One thing that might be going through your head already is that, like, okay, Claudia is great, but every time I change my code, I need to do a Claudia update, and it's going to take like 20 seconds each time. Like that's going to get annoying really fast, right? And I came to that same conclusion. So how I dealt with that was creating unit tests, and so utilizing unit tests, I can run my function and run it locally without actually having to utilize it through the endpoints. So I'm going to go ahead and start that up. I'm going to install a bunch of dependencies here. So you can see I'm installing Mocha for our testing library. I'm going to use the chai assertion library. I'm also installing ESLint. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. We always need to be linting to catch errors quickly. And to that point, I'll go ahead and create a r.eslint.rc.js file and drop some code in there. To make sure we're not doing anything wrong there. And then we'll enable our tests, or we'll make it so we can actually utilize our tests in our npm package.json. It's just super simple, calling Mocha, and then we've got a timeout for asynchronous calls that we'll be doing later. And now let me create my test folder. And a new file, test.js. And within there, we're just going to drop a few unit tests. Now, I guess calling these unit tests, I don't know, if there's any test purists out there, you might be balking at me calling these unit tests. I guess in some sense they are, but they're really kind of maybe a little bit more functional tests. I guess it matters how strict you are. But here I'm including chai. I'm creating an instance of our module, our jSTL bot that we just created, and then I'm just basically calling our get response function and expecting certain responses, right? So this isn't super advanced and it's not necessarily unit testing, but it's really good for what we need to do, which is engage all of our functions with all of our different possible input options at one time. So if I run npm test, I think we should be good here. We'll see that we've got 4 tests here. The one about the organizer is working, the one about the homepage is working, a nonsense question is working, but we've got a problem with our Trello one, so let's go and see what's going on there. So we're saying, how can I propose a talk is the input question, and then it should say check out our Trello planning board. Let me go over to our jSTL bot, and okay, well there's the problem, right? We're only matching against Trello, we're not matching against how can I propose a talk, so we might just add in, maybe the word propose or something like that. If I spelled that right, our tests should all be passing now, right? So that's kind of an example of how it might save you some time, where if I was having to go through and publish my changes, that would have taken a while. So now that we've got some more advanced endpoints, right, we can ask it about the organizer, we can ask it about the homepage. Let's go ahead and deploy it to yet another platform. This time I'm going to use Twilio. Twilio's, how many of you have used Twilio before? Okay, a few. Yeah, it's a super great service. It's basically APIs around phone numbers. So it gives you APIs to send texts, receive texts, send phone calls, receive phone calls, all this different stuff. So it's great. Like before, I'm going to do a Claudia update and tac configure Twilio SMS bot. So I'll run that. And while it's running in the background, that's going to take a few seconds. So let me pop over to Twilio and show you what we've got going over here. So I've just created a trial account. This is free. I think they've got some sort of free tier. But when you create a Twilio account, you have to, you've got all these different services. And so I've gone ahead and created a phone number, which they'll assign you. It's an interesting process. If you haven't done it, you can request things, and you can try and match a certain digit thing, so you can match a word or something. But so I just grabbed a random St. Louis phone number, and it verifies that you can own it and everything. But then you get all these webhooks, right? So voice, when a call comes in, call this webhook, or what we're interested in, messaging. When an SMS comes in, go ahead and call this webhook. So that's what we're going to be using here. As you can see, this update process does sometimes take a little bit. So here, I think this demonstrates kind of versus Slack. Slack was asking for its token, where in this Twilio, it's asking for the API key. So we'll just paste that in there. And then the auth token right here. Don't steal my account. Twilio phone number. So here's where we go over to that phone number and we use it. So 314, what is it? 310 4282. Great, so now that's all set up, and I can copy, similar to before, I'm going to copy over this Twilio endpoint and go into here, and under my messaging, when a message comes in, call this webhook, paste in my endpoint there, and save it out. So now, with any luck, we should be able to ask that phone number. I've got my Google Voice up here, send a message, phone number, oh, come on. I'm going to say, what is the home page? Now, Twilio does take a few more seconds than the Slack does, but there you go. You can see that immediately came up with that response. Check out our website at meetup.com/jSTL meetup. Now, what is the Trello? This is all through texting, right? So you could use your phone if you wanted. In fact, my phone's buzzing, like Google Voice is buzzing in my pocket. But yeah, so there's SMS. It's pretty simple to do through Twilio, and that's great.
That's pretty cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is.
I've wanted to explore Twilio. I've just never had a project where it's required.
I'm interested in how it's deploying the lambdas and the API gateway stuff, because that's not fun to do and it's not easy.
I know, right? So a few more. So that's. I think that we're through about kind of half of my, or maybe 3/4 of the demos here. This is kind of the slightly more advanced section, which it's really not that advanced. I'm going to talk a little bit more about debugging and throw in a few more functionalities to our bot before we're done here. So one thing about AWS is that with Lambda, like you were saying, it can sometimes be, you can debug a lot using the test framework that I just showed you, but sometimes, I think we've all been here, problems happen when they're out in production, right? You don't catch your problem in your testing framework, and there's something happening and you can't quite figure out what exactly is going on. You really need to go back to the AWS logs. And so you can get to the AWS logs pretty easily. So let me go to my Lambda over here. And if you're familiar with Lambda functions, if you go to monitoring and you hit jump to logs, it'll pop you over to the CloudWatch logs for
Fantastic.
yeah. I think it sounds like, yeah, I know. Okay, thank you. That's where I'm going, right? So these are right. Like, this isn't fun to look at. You have to like refresh all the time,
Yes.
and
Searching, filtering, not fun.
yeah, exactly. So what I found, and maybe someone in here has even better ideas, but I found this package called AWS logs. Yeah, so you can run this from the command line.
Tailor to.
So we'll do AWS logs get groups, and this is going to show me AWS logs get, groups. So this is going to show me all the Lambda kind of endpoints that I can investigate, and then so I'm going to do AWS logs. Need to look at the get/AWS Lambda. Test is the one that I know I've deployed because I'm in a folder called test. That's why I gave it that name. I'm going to do all and then watch, like you were saying. And what this is going to do is give you basically what you want, right? Which is show you the logs on your local machine. You don't have to be in the browser, and it's also going to tail those logs. So if I went over to, say, our jSTL bot, and I did a console.log test text text. Oh, I should have done this before. If I do a Claudia update, it's going to package that up, and then we'll be able to see that console.log in there. This is going to take a minute or so, so maybe I'll just skip that.
So if you do Claudia.update without specifying the particular service, it updates all services?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All enabled services, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
because and it's really not updating all the services per se, right? Because you've only got one Lambda function. The services are just the API gateway. So if I switch that over to, and this is something I didn't show either. So if I go to API,
It's all a single Lambda?
yeah,
Okay, so it's doing all the logic, the routing and API gateway.
exactly. So over here you'll see that that's weird. Got my Slack endpoint. I've also got my Facebook endpoint. Something is screwy here. Usually it should show all of them. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Oh, because it's actually it's refreshing them. It is redeploying them, right?
Okay.
So that's why it wasn't showing me all those. But basically, it creates all those endpoints that are all pointing back to your single Lambda function. And so that's kind of how it works. And you can kind of dig in here. I don't really dig too much around here because like we just saw, it configures it all for you, so you don't really even have to worry about anything. But if you're an AWS geek, I'm sure you can get in here and really understand what's going on.
So you have a little bit of downtime during that update?
Apparently, yes. Apparently. Yeah, I haven't worked on like super high intensity bots, but yeah, that might be something to think about if you're something that you can't go down or you have an SLA or something like that.
Funny enough, I've actually worked on Alexa and with our thermostat integration and Google Home, and this would have saved us a lot of time. I doubt we'd ever write it with this, but we could have got something done in a day.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
You could at least prototype with it.
Right, exactly.
So and looking at all this, and like I'm not a DevOps person, and I'm not a fan of DevOps. Like it frustrates the hell out of me. So having all of this abstracted, we had a talk today at work on Heroku and Elastic Beanstalk, just to like kind of like help pass that knowledge throughout the dev team. And like I'm a fan of Heroku because I don't have to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So this I'm enjoying this for the same reasons.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so now let's see. Thank you guys for asking questions, because now that's deployed and we can go over here. So let's so you can see here's my terminal. Let's go back to Slack just for fun /JSTL. I'll ask about the organizer, and we can see there it responded. And now since we're tailing the logs, it is a little delayed because I think it's like pinging AWS in the background. But we can see that here we've got the start request ID, and here's our text that console.log that I just put in there. So that's a better way, at least from my experience. It's nicer to tail the logs here. And if you've got a problem that's only happening in production, which we actually did at one point, this is a really good way to do it rather than having to go through CloudWatch.
Are you able to put like markers in on this tail, like this log tail? Like
I
if
don't
you
know.
like hit enter space or something like that, does it put a temporary marker in? It does?
Should.
Oh.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, maybe it depends on your terminal.
Yeah, that could be.
Cool. So just the last thing here, just adding in a little bit more functionality. We've got our next meeting, right? And I wanted to make our bot just a little bit smarter. And so I wanted to actually utilize the Meetup API to hit the Meetup API and actually respond back with the next meeting. So how would that look like? We are now going to be in asynchronous world, right, with a request out to our API. So to do that, I'm actually going to have to install. I'm going to install the request package. I'm going to install the request pack promise native to use promises, and the chai as promised package so that we can also include our tests with a promise. I need to go grab our meetup.js file here.
It's been a while since I used Chai, but I think it does. It can handle promises without that library, maybe.
Oh really? I didn't know that. I thought you needed it. So there are packages out on NPM that supposedly interact with the Meetup API, but all the ones I looked at were like way too complicated, and they're like switching to a new version of, so it's just like, I'm not even gonna worry about this. I'm just gonna create my small 20-line API. So here we've just got an API URL. We can instantiate an instance of our class, and then I'm just returning back a promise, literally to just the API / the name of the meetup / events, and I'm saying JSON is true. So simple request pattern, if you're familiar with that in Node.js. To utilize this API, I'm going to include it at the top of our bot code. Let me close a few things here. So here I'm, like I said, including that module that I just copied in. I'm defining out the name of our meetup. jSTL-meetup is the slug of our meetup.com group. And then I'm creating a new instance of the Meetup API here. And then going to utilize it later on. Right here in our to-do. This is a decent amount of code, but it's really not doing anything too complex. We're basically just saying, hey, grab the events, and with the event that comes back, if we've got any events that come back from the API, just build up our string, right? So the next event is called insert name, and it's on insert date. This is all just coming from the Meetup API. And if we have our property that's called venue, go ahead and also put in the venue name, right? So pretty simple. If not, just end it and return that string back. So I'll save this, and now we want to test it in our testing library. So, and actually my notes are telling me to run an npm Claudia update in the background. So we'll do that in the background. It'll package this stuff up. But in our testing library, we want to add our tests for this new functionality. So I'm going to add in my chai as promised, and I'm going to add a single additional testing test case. Let's see. So we're just going to say here, it should respond correctly for a question about the next meeting. So when we ask it, what is the next meeting? It should start with the next event is. I'm not even worrying about that it should match the correct whatever's coming back from the API. Just trying to make sure that it's kind of working correctly.
So I think, to eventually have, I think that's part of the promise. So I don't believe Chai has.
Yeah, it only takes that done.
Yeah.
Just done call.
Cool. So let's do, am I in the right place? npm test. And we see we've now got 5 passing tests, and it took 127 milliseconds, which is red, but we know that's asynchronous, so we know we're all good there. We've also published out our code while we were doing all that. So let me look at my notes. I think that's all we need to do. Yeah. So now we should be able to, any luck, ask it when is the next meeting. And there we go. Next event is called Writing Cross-Platform Bot. Wait, I'm giving it. No, that's wrong. I'm going to call that an API problem. And it's on today, and it will be located at the CIC, right? So now we've got a little bit, we're starting to get a little bit more smartness in there by calling out to an external API. All right. And I think that's all I got. So hopefully you guys picked up on that. As you can see, it's very simple to do. It's really quick to get going. Great weekend project, like I said, or you can build more on it. It's just a Node application, so you can build as much smart logic into there as you can. You can expose it to all the different platforms you want. And yeah, it's a great little technology. So thanks, everybody.
Cool.